Hi and welcome everyone to this referee discussion on referees and ARs. My name is Kevin Suares and I'll be your host for the discussion. First, I want to thank you for taking time out on your Sunday, on both sides of the pond. And I really want to welcome everyone from both the Norfolk County FA as well as referees abroad to the U.S. Officials Referee Academy Little Powwow. Thanks again for being here, and thank you for your time. I'd first like to turn it over to Daniel Curcio to have him say a few words on behalf of referees abroad. He and Jack Smith from the Norfolk County FA were instrumental in putting this together. So Daniel, a couple minutes.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being connected today. It's going to be a great event, I'm sure. As Kevin said, my name is Daniel. Many of you know me already. I'm the president of Referee Abroad, which is a big international network of referees that organizes a number of tournaments worldwide. Many of you are here thanks to having participated to our events before. It's great to see about 50 of you, so that's a good number. I was told by Kevin that there's people from 10 different countries, so we expect a nice discussion today. You will be able to discuss how refereeing is in your own countries. There will be a couple of questions. As you know, the session today is about the relationship between referees and ARs. So it's a very interesting subject, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I would like also to thank Jack Smith. Jack is the chairman of the Norfolk Referee Association. He was instrumental in putting this together. We've been working together for many years, Jack. He's been coming to tournaments with us, and I'm really grateful for your help today, Jack. Thank you very much.
Jack,
do you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks. Good evening, everyone. Nice to be in such a mixed company from across Europe and also in the US. I've been a chairman of Norfolk Referees Association now for about 5 years, and I picked the job up when we were going downhill. I think that with the help of Danielle going to tournaments abroad, I've lifted up the spirit of the Referees Association, and I see that this is another step of us forging links with referees across the European continent and America in a way that we can hopefully discuss the way that things that we do here and the way the things that you do in your country, and to the benefit of everybody, and hope that we can move forward. I'm looking forward this evening to a really interesting conversation. Yes, thank you very much. And I've been very pleased to be able to be part of this, and particularly to Cara and Kevin for organising the meeting as such. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Danielle. Just a couple of things. Let me just get the presentation rolling, but we definitely want to encourage conversation here. It's the primary reason why we got together. Little bit of humor there. And definitely the collaborators that we need to thank, obviously, Jack and Danielle, Cara Honthumb, who is my co-director on the U.S. Officials Referee Academy, as well as our advisory team, Leaflon Aklaglanian and Paul Athanasiadis, without whom this would not at all be possible. We do want to dedicate today to a fallen referee. He was a part of the U.S. Army aviation branch, who was in an accident on Thursday. Marwan was attended actually our first referee academy, and was a airport a pilot on the UH-60 that went down. He was a great and wonderful person, always curious, really smart, and very much into football. and we do mourn his loss. And may he rest in peace. A brief agenda for today. We kind of want to, now that we've introduced, we're going to do a couple ground rules. You were muted on your way in. This was to try and facilitate good discussion, but also to try and get things run a little more smoothly. Part of what we will do is that Carol will post a link for questions at the end in the chat window. And if you have questions on this that we can address later, please do. We will be calling on people. We will have, that's the interesting part of the discussion. I'm just going to be the framer of said discussion, but then we definitely want to hear from you and hear your opinion. If you want, you can use, raise your hand if need be, and we can definitely call on you if you have something to contribute at that time. But it is a discussion. It's not just me talking here or being the instructor. And these are the different areas that we're going to look at. At the end, we're going to wrap up and we're going to talk. We're going to have some Q&As and kind of go from there. The reason that this all came about is our Referee Academy actually has a book club. And we were reading Howard Webb's The Man in the Middle. And in going through the book, I was reading ahead. Actually, I've read the book several times. And chapter 10 specifically talks about his relationship with Darren Cann, who is his assistant referee for both World Cups as well as a lot of UEFA competitions. I think in there, he says that he worked with Darren over 200 occasions and Darren rarely made a bad call. He always valued his opinion above everyone else's. The relationship between referee and AR is almost inseparable. They have to work as a unit. You have to work as one. And based on this, we decided that it would be a good thing to get the referees together to chat. And so this was the genesis for this. And we're welcome to, and so therefore we're welcome to have this here. So we're going to talk about referee and AR communication, and I'll call now on Lewis Smith. Lewis, can you kind of give me an idea of what you think about communication between referees and ARs? Sorry, 1 second. We have to get you unmuted. Can you hear us, Lewis?
There you go. Is that better? Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
So,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So, from your perspective, where are we on what is your view of referee communication?
I think that referee communication has to be very good between both him and the ARs, especially if you don't work with the same two ARs every single game. I think that you definitely have to have a very broad vision between all of you. So all three of you need to be on the same wavelength when discussing, definitely pre-match. If you definitely don't work with them every week in, week out, if you don't work in the same team, you should definitely have a very big, like, deep, in-depth pre-match so you're all on the same wavelength. Because if there's no communication with the ARs and the referee, then the whole game, it can really impact your match control. So if you're not all on the same understanding before the game starts, and when the game does start, it could go seriously wrong.
Okay, and what ways in your when does this communication start?
I think it starts before the game, even like weeks before the game, maybe before the game, sending an email, communicating with, or even a phone, like phoning the ARs. If you don't get that bit right, then it could like just impact the whole game from then on. So I think it starts definitely before the game even kicks off, definitely.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to address Ryan Block. Ryan, what tools do we have to be able to communicate with referees and ARs?
We'll see. We got eye contact, predetermined hand gestures. You start working higher level games and you have communication devices, beeper flags. Again, things that you go over in the pregame. So for me, I always tell my ARs, eye contact, give me a little, if you see nothing there, give me a little head shake, maybe a subtle hand wave. If you see something there and I miss it, look me dead in the eye, give me the deer in the headlights look. Say the look of like, what are you doing? If I'm still not calling it, pop the flag, wave the flag. If you see a foul.
So you have hand gestures, you have obviously the flags you can wave. And I'm talking about, we'll start without comms because comms then takes it to another level. And I always believe that you should be able to handle this without comms before you get into starting to use comms or beeper flags, because that can make a situation worse in some cases, right? Are there any situations that you can think of where you can use non-standard forms of communication, Ryan?
Yeah. So to take it to extreme, a mass confrontation. Okay. So you got a big group of players meeting in the middle, triangulate, and whether just straight words.
Okay. Well, words. That's definitely one way of looking at it. But in terms of communication, I mean, obviously for mass confrontation, you'll have that'll be in your pregame, which is also something that we'll cover. But is there anything else? Because you have obviously flags, you have verbal, nonverbal. Obviously, you can wave. What about, like, say, being able on a PK to step on the field or step off the field to indicate whether it's a good goal?
Right.
Right. We have these other ways of communicating. Good. No, thank you, Ryan. Jacobo, Stefani, we'll start with you. Is there anything else that we may have missed, or is there anything that you do that is different from what we've said so far?
I don't think so. I think that's all a referee or an assistant referee can do. It's all. I can't think about something else. Actually, maybe the while talking with the coaches of the teams, that the assistant referee is maybe I can ask the assistant referee the first assistant referee to talk with them and to interact with them if they are protesting too much or things like that. And then he obviously need to say me if he's continuing to do it at that, and obviously then there will be a red card for the coaches or the players on the bench.
Okay. So cards themselves are also a tool of communication, are they not?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Yep, because if you give a yellow card, you're not just signaling to that player; you're signaling to all the other players, as well as you're signaling to your assistant referees that this is someone to watch. This is someone that we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe during the briefing, if you already know members of the teams, players, coaches, or during also the half time, you can as a referee tell the assistant referee to check on, for example, number 11 or number 9 because he tend to protest too much or do things that are not regular.
Right. Oh, good points. Very good points. Okay. Thank you very much. So I want to go now into the relationships, because we know definitely how to communicate on the field, but I want to start talking about things like trust and being able to build trust. A very good friend of mine made the comment that it will take you 10 games to be able to build trust with a referee, and then it'll take like 1 second for you to lose that. The referee DC that's here, is there anything else? Is there anything that you'd like to say about this, or anything that you'd like to make a comment on?
Yes, thanks, Kevin. Good evening, everybody in Europe. Good afternoon, everybody in America. This is Darren Cann. I was Howard Webb's assistant referee for 10 years, and it's a pleasure to speak with you this afternoon or this evening. On the subject of trust, Kevin, I think it's the most important commodity to build teamwork, between that relationship between the referee and his or her two assistant referees. And I think empowerment is so important before the game, as a couple of our colleagues has already spoken about. It's about building those relationships in that pre-match time and also in the pre-match instructions as well, and making the assistant referees very much part of the team, empowering them to give that decision, because as an assistant referee, you will then sort of do everything you can to make sure that referee has a good game, if that bond is built, if that trust is there. So it's a really, really underrated quality, and something that is so important.
All right. And thank you also, Darren, for joining us on this. Yes, folks, the cat's out of the bag, that we have a surprise for you. Darren has been with Howard more than 200 games, and was an integral part of Howard making the World Cup of his own admission. But in terms of trust, what sort of stuff did you and Howard do off the field that kind of helped build the rapport and the relationship?
Well, the credit has to go to Howard rather than me, to be honest, Kevin, because on our very first game back in 2005 now, I'd never met him before. I knew he was a Premier League referee and an international referee. And my very first game with him was an international game in Switzerland. And I didn't know him. I was very nervous to meet him. And immediately, as soon as I met him at the airport, he gave me a big bear hug and he said, "I'm so pleased that you're in my team. I'm really looking forward to working with you. I've heard so much about you. I know your qualities." And immediately that put me at ease. And immediately I thought, I really want to work for this guy. And so just that initial bond, and those first impressions, I think, are so crucial to get those right, to send the right signals so that your assistants have confidence in you. And as I say, we were very lucky to work together for 10 years after that.
Oh, good. Excellent to hear. And when do you think, especially for most of us that aren't in the professional leagues quite yet, when does that relationship begin? Is that first meeting, or is it the first time when you get together on the game? When does that actually begin?
Well, for us, it was certainly the first meeting. This was the day before the match, but it was an international match. So I appreciate that at local level, you're only maybe going to meet some assistant referees for the first time, maybe 1 hour before kickoff. So it's really important, again, that you build that rapport, and maybe as the referee do a little bit of homework. When I referee matches, I still do a little bit of homework and find out from colleagues a little bit about my assistants, a little bit about the games they've done, and just Google them and find out information. And these are men and women at local level that I've not met before. But again, just having something in common, something that you can talk about, and also mentioning maybe a game that they've done well on, or maybe a cup final that they've done in past seasons, something to get the ball rolling. I think that's really important. But generally, it's just about building those relationships and creating confidence within the team so that you go out onto the pitch as a team.
Good. And I just want to let you know that your camera right now is facing, I think, a doorway. So maybe we just want to adjust that. Well, I want to bring in Matteo Piazza. Is there something else that you'd like to add, or a question for Darren, maybe in regards to the trust of the referee and how we start and how you get that relationship and how it's built? Matteo, are you with us? Kara, are we having issues with mute?
No, Matteo does not seem to be responding to the unmuting.
Okay. Sure. In that case, let's go with Logan Alger. Logan, anything that you would like to add to the conversation?
Yeah. I guess thank you first and foremost, Darren, for taking the time out of your day to bless us with your knowledge today. That's greatly appreciated. Honored to be in your presence, especially since I've found myself more on the assistant referee side of things as of late. Initially, of course, most referees want to be the man in the middle and be the shining spotlight in the match, but I've found myself more towards being an assistant referee on the side is more where my skills lie. And so I guess my question would be, what characteristic do you think is the most critical aside from trust, or like what skill would you say is most critical for you as an assistant referee in being able to support say Howard Webb on the big stage in those like big moments, like the match critical instance, when things are kind of going nuts? What are some skills or attributes that you fall back on in those situations?
Did we lose Darren?
It looks like we may have. I'm not seeing him in the participants list.
All right. In that case, can I call on Mr. Bob Crinklewood? If you can step in and see if you can answer the question.
Oh, Bob Cricklewood, what a name. Hi, everybody. Hi, guys. That's not just a random sort of a name. Bob Cricklewood is a little bit of an in-joke with myself and Darren. I once pretended I'd got a text from somebody called Bob Cricklewood saying what a terrible decision he'd made in the game. So well, there you go. Good to see everybody. Really great to join this group. I'm kind of like the US England link, I guess. Currently living in New Jersey, but at the minute actually in England. I've come back for the international break between MLS regular season and the playoffs. So just spending a bit of time with my family back in England, but great to link up with some people that I know pretty well on this call as well. So Mr. Ryan Block, get yourself ready for the playoffs, and that tweeting of the video reviews does a great job for me, does Ryan Block. So yeah, great to spend some time with you. Great to listen to Darren talk about the role that he played. Make no mistake, my success, my career was so massively benefited by Mike Malarkey and Darren Cann, who were at the time the best two assistant referees in the world. Darren's, I think, dropped off the course, so I can say maybe there's some others that are better than him now, I don't know, but I'm sure he's still one of the very, very best. He had this unbelievable talent and reading and understanding of the game that really very few people have. And I'll talk about why I think he had that. But before I go into a few more things, I just want to say, obviously, thoughts are with Marwan Garber. I mean, it makes us all realize how precious life is and how we have to be good to each other and kind to each other at a time when a lot of people want to go head to head and want to have confrontation and friction. So enjoy every moment, really, guys. Enjoy what you do in this sport of ours. We're a really amazing group of people who share our love for the game in the most difficult way possible, and that's the refereeing. So never lose sight of that. So our thoughts go out to Marwan's family and friends. Yeah, and then just never underestimate your role in the game either. I think it was Logan who talked about his specialism being an assistant referee, and some people are mechanically better attuned mentally and physically for being an assistant, but that doesn't mean you don't contribute in a full way to the game. I've already mentioned that Darren's ability on the line gave me real confidence to know that I got extra pairs of eyes in places that I couldn't get to. I couldn't see certain situations. It's a team effort. In 2020, officiating soccer is it's a team effort. It really is. You can't do it effectively alone. So you have to have the support of your colleagues, and you've got to be prepared to run through a brick wall for each other to be successful. And you've got to show a united front. You know, you can't show that you don't agree with each other. You can't show cracks in that teamwork. You've got to show that you're united, and you've got to defend and support each other all of that time. I think the fact that both Darren and I refereed and also assisted at high levels. I mean, I was a Premier League assistant for 2 years. Bizarrely, I don't know how I got there, but I did in the late 90s. I think that gave me a good understanding for some of the limitations, I guess, when you're on the line about what you can and can't see. You are restricted to a position. You're guided by the second rearmost defender. You can't adjust your position. So as the referee, I need to make sure that when I'm asking for information from the referee, that is factored into my considerations. But also Darren as well refereed at a good level. He refereed in the 5th league in England, which is pretty much professional, having played at a really good level, and therefore his knowledge of officiating, but the game as well, was really, really important. A few things that we always did. We always did pre-match instructions. No matter how many times we'd worked together, we always went through the process of talking about the game before we did. Well, so we always did. There was one occasion where we kind of like realised we were getting a bit loose with our pre-match instructions, and our performance has dipped. So, you know, it was a lesson for me to make sure you do the right things in the right way before the game, things that work for you, to put you in the right mindset before the game as a team and individually. We always did the basics well. So we always had eye-to-eye contact. We always made sure that we didn't cut corners. We always gave 100% to everything. We always made sure that we got down to every goal line. We didn't take chances. We didn't risk things that, you know, okay, this is not likely to happen, so we can cut a corner here or there. We didn't, and we didn't cut corners in training either. So the reason why we got to the final in 2010 in South Africa is because we gave 100% to every session in our training. I've got a wonderful picture of Mike and Darren doing an exercise, an offside exercise, where they are so attuned to each other in terms of this crossover exercise. It's amazing. It really is. It's just a training exercise on a training field with no fans and whatever, but FIFA were watching, and it clearly became apparent that we were giving 100% to everything. And we always presented that united image. Last thing I want to say, communication's key between officials. So set the parameters before the game. The referee sets the tone. The referee sets the tone about when it's expected that the assistant will have a better angle of view or have better information. So talk about that pre-game, talk about those situations. For example, when tackles are moving towards the touchline and the assistant has got the in-between view, then the assistant is expected to have the better viewing angle of the straight leg and the studs going into the shin that's near the touchline, because the referee's centrally position is more likely to be looking from the back. So talk about this before the game, so the assistant is thinking, this is likely to be my responsibility here. So I need to be focused on that tackle going towards my touchline. Considering as well, of course, that the assistant might have an offside decision, so the referee has to be aware that that is their primary responsibility most of the time, because they're the only one who can make an offside call. So when is the AR likely to have better information? When can the assistant volunteer information without being asked? And I talked about in the book how Darren was somebody who would tell me when he was certain. I loved to hear the words, I am 100% certain as a ref. If Darren or Mike said to me, I'm 100% certain, that gave me the confidence without any doubt to act upon it, because I trusted them, because I'd worked with them before numerous times. And that trust does take a bit of time. And maybe in the first few times you work with an assistant, maybe you want to say, okay, don't volunteer information unless your level of certainty is absolutely 100%. You know, don't volunteer information. If I have to ask for information, I will do. Maybe, you know, you don't need to say those words later on. Is it okay for an assistant to say, I think this is what happened? I think it is. I think it is. If the referee is looking for the pieces of the jigsaw to pull together and they don't have all of the information, then it's okay to say, the referee to instigate the conversation, how did that look to you? And the AR might say, it looked two-footed, or it looked excessive. It looked like there was contact from the studs to the shin. That might just be the bit of information the assistant needs to give them the confidence to jump into a red card. So sometimes that can happen. And the final point is the soft skills. We've talked about this, the communication on situations, but also the soft skills where when the game's going difficult for the assistant, you might not have comms kits, but just a look, just a thumbs up, just a nodding of the head. if you've got comms kits, being able to say, hey, keep going, don't lose the line, believe in yourself. 22 minutes into the World Cup final between Spain and the Netherlands, the game's not going to plan. The yellow card is not having the effect that I'm expecting it to have, having shown 4 in the first 22 minutes. And, you know, I said to Darren and Mike on the radio, this is not going to plan. And Darren comes back to me very quickly and said, believe in yourself, do what you're here to do, don't lose the line. And it gives you confidence to continue doing the job properly. So those soft skills, when all is breaking loose around you, that calmness, that ability. And again, you don't all work with comms kits, but it can be done through body language as well. So lots and lots of ways that we can work together to assist in getting the right outcome. Don't forget, last thing to say, it takes a team. It takes a team to deliver a game of football at this level. Some of you have to work alone. I used to have to work alone. It's hard. It's really hard. But when you've got a team and you're well briefed and you've got belief in each other, you show a united front, you do the basics well, and you don't cut corners, it makes life a lot easier. So that was my 15-minute introduction and welcome.
No problem, Mr. Crin. No problem. I believe so. Darren, you're back, right?
I'm back.
Ah, good to hear. Now, Howard, I'm going to kind of turn the tables on you because Darren talked about when the two of you first met in the airport. What was your recollection of that moment, and how did that help build the first bit of trust? What was going through your head in that regard?
When he walked into the airport, I thought, who's this? Is he the guy that's been assigned to my game? I can't believe it. No, when he walked into the airport, I knew of Darren. He built himself a reputation already. I mean, bearing in mind, I got on the Premier League in 2003. Darren got on the Premier League in 2005, I think, Darren? Yes. 4 or 5? Yeah. We don't work together. 5. By 2006, he'd been assigned to the FA Cup final. I mean, that tells you the quality of this guy. Outstanding talent, and it very quickly was apparent to everybody that this guy knew what he was doing. So I'd heard about this reputation that he'd got, and I was pleased to be having the opportunity as a first-year FIFA official to work with him, and realised that, you know, he'd got a big future ahead of him on the line, because, you know, everybody had said to me that had worked with him, this is something pretty special. So I wanted to make him feel part of my team, make him feel welcome. I wanted to let him know that I, from an early stage, would trust him and believe in him. I wanted him to use that ability on my game. And, you know, we clicked pretty early, pretty quickly. Somebody shares the passion for the game that I have. If you don't appreciate already by now, and a lot of people on the call will have met me anyway, but if you don't appreciate that I've got a passion for the game, you know, I really do. Darren shares that passion. I've got a passion for this group of people as well, this officiating family. So people who share that passion, I'm drawn towards, and I was quickly drawn towards Darren as an individual as well. It was the start of, it was the luckiest stroke of luck that I could have had, really, that our careers coincided. But I think the referee needs to make sure that you build that ethos, that teamwork ethos. You're all in it together. You're working for each other. And yeah, the referee has to have some sort of an ego, but you have to make sure it's not arrogance, and you have to make sure that people want to run through that big wall for you. And it's your job to set the tone. From an assistant referee point of view, it's your job not to be too overbearing. It's your job not to be too intrusive. Understand your role and responsibility, but equally don't be silent. Don't be the quiet person in the corner. Contribute to the team effort and work as that team.
What we'll do is that we'll stop and take a couple questions, and I want to remind folks that if you have questions for Darren or Howard, please use the Google link that's in the chat window. Just click on it, submit your questions, and we'll call on you to actually ask them live. This is still a discussion. I want to go first to Katie McCormick. Katie, you have a question for Darren and Howard? Katie, you with us? Katie, you can barely hear you are unmuted. Not sure why, Katie, we can't hear you. I see your lips moving, but. No, we still can't for some reason. Let's what we'll do is that we'll go to someone else, and we can ask your question. We'll see if we can get back to you. Kara, who else do we have?
So next up, we have Ben Green.
Hi, Darren. Hi, Howard.
Hi, Ben.
How's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks, man.
Good, thank you.
Darren, bit of a joke question first. Dan, he'd kill me if I didn't ask, but is Dan Robertson the next big AR coming out of England?
Did he put you up to that question? Did he? He's an assistant. Yeah, for those that don't know, Dan is a Premier League assistant referee, and he's been on for a couple of seasons now, and he's very, very talented. And yeah, he has all the attributes to go to the very, very top. So I wish him well.
I'll tell him. I'll let him know what you said. He'll be happy. Howard, just a quick one for you, really. Coming up through the levels, I'm now a level 4. I just wondered what your views were when you were being observed. Were you happy to potentially lose marks on things like application of law to maintain match control? So such things as delaying the restart of play potentially early in the game. I think coming up through the levels, you're very keen on ticking all the boxes, especially early in the game, maybe at the detriment of your match control. Would you say that's something that's a hard thing to learn coming through? Or what was your view on it? Would you try and maintain match control over everything?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, match control's obviously crucial, and having credibility among the participants, the players. When I started and was coming through, I mean, just for the information of all of you, I guess, but particularly for the colleagues from the US and around the world, we were pretty much promoted through the ranks on the basis of the marks that were given by the clubs. So each club would give us a mark out of 10. And you would only get assessed every, few months, maybe twice a year, and you had to get 2 assessments to get promoted to the next level as you were coming through. I know in the US, officials sort of arrange assessments themselves. We never did that. That was done by the county association. When they saw somebody was showing some promise, they would have an assessor assigned, and you didn't know the assessor was there quite often, like in those days. If you did, you'd get pretty nervous. But you learned to manage situations that you thought were manageable, to enhance your authority, to maintain your credibility. One of these skills, though, is to understand what is manageable and what's not. And if you overmanage and try to not do the job properly, if you like, then the players will see through you as not being authentic. And I can remember a game that I was watching once where a young referee didn't send a player off. It was 6-0. The player punched the ball over the crossbar in the final minute to stop a goal and didn't send him off. And it's, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense not to do the job properly in those circumstances. And even now, to our referees working on MLS, I'll say, don't take the stupidity of a player onto your shoulders. Don't take their foolishness onto your shoulders. Don't take the risk. If a player does something crazy and he's already on a yellow card, then show him the second yellow card. If you're coming out of that situation thinking, I hope he doesn't score the winning goal from this point onwards, you're taking on too much risk. For sure, don't be the fall guy for him, because quite often it'll work against you, and that guy will end up scoring the goal. Or the next stop is there will be a substitution, and his number will be on the board because the coach has realised that you're being soft and that you should have done the job, and that doesn't increase your respect in the eyes of that coach who's benefited from your charity. Not at all. It actually diminishes your authority. So I always say to the guy, don't be the fall guy for somebody's stupidity. But there is a place for proactive management. There is a place for understanding how you can avoid things from happening. So if you think somebody might be delaying the restart, you recognise the times when delaying the restart is likely to happen, then by being proactive, vocalising instructions to players, being close to players who might do it, not being lazy. You can never be a lazy official. Refereeing for 95 minutes in a game hurts your head because you're always thinking about what could happen and how you can avoid something from happening. And I've said for a long time, the best referees are the ones who are able to prevent things from happening by subtle interventions. And quite often, you'll see some referees have high levels of red cards and some have low levels throughout the season. in my opinion, it's got to be a sign of success if you've got a low level of red cards, provided that you're not turning a blind eye to red card offences, provided that you're not shirking your job. But if you can intervene by being proactive, then that's got to be a sign of a good referee, an effective referee. And that's not always picked up by assessors. It's not always picked up by the viewing public. They don't see the work, the hard work that's been done behind the scenes that keeps everybody calm, that prevents things from happening. And just dealing with things that does happen is not really the sign of a successful referee. It's being able to be proactive. Occasionally, I would turn a blind eye to things if I thought that the benefit was for me, my control. But I always tried to be proactive and prevent things from happening in the first place where I could. But if a player was stupid, then I would punish the player. And even more so now I've finished, and I'm working with this group of 25 MLS referees, and I want them to be successful. I don't want them to take the stupidity of the player onto their shoulders. And that's what we work on quite a lot, I think, at the moment.
Thank you very much for that. Darren, in your opinion, because obviously Howard has the whistle, Howard has the cards and that kind of stuff, how do you then excise your level of trust and communication if there is an issue that, say, Howard may not be as attuned to be able to get him to know what it is, deal with it appropriately, and now that you have his implicit trust, you know, how does that work from your perspective on the line? I think Darren's muted again, Karen.
Sorry, Kevin, that the Wi-Fi dipped out. Can you just repeat the question, please?
Yep, no problem. Essentially, if you're on the line, you don't have cards, you don't have a whistle, but if there's something that has happened within your purview that you need, say, Howard to be able to react to, or the referee, how do you do that? What's your communication method standing from the line?
Well, I think it depends on whether the incident is in your credible zone as the assistant referee. So if it's in, shall we say, the nearest quarter of the field, or certainly that 20 metres in from your touchline, then by all means flag. If you've got a better angle, or even the proximity is better. The difficulty comes when the referee is a lot closer to the incident and you're not credible to flag. And then you have to use the communication system if you're lucky enough to have one. Or if you don't have communication system, then maybe the buzzer to alert, and then when the referee looks to flag then. But you would hope that the referee would pick up the incident. What I would say, however, is if it's a case of violent conduct, then it doesn't matter where on the field. If you are 100% certain, and Howard talked earlier about being 100%, if you're 100% certain, then you owe it to the game to actually sort of step up to the plate and give that decision, whether it's by flag or whether it's by verbal communication. But of course, I appreciate that a lot of our colleagues on the call today won't have the communication system. So if it is violent conduct, then you need to flag, even if you're 60 yards away from the incident, because at the end of the day, it's about getting the right decision. And we can talk about whether it's an untidy, whether you got there untidily or whether you got there with the right means, but ultimately it's the decision that matters. And as I say, hopefully you're in the credible position to give it, and the referee picks up the flag pretty early. So flag when you're credible. If it's violent conduct, flag anyway. But and that's of course if you haven't got a communication system. If you do have the communication system, then there are times when you don't need to flag at all, and just give the information via the comms.
Okay. And in terms of overall match control, we know that, and this is also part of communication, that there are, which Howard actually talked about briefly earlier, there are areas on the field at times where the individual is vulnerable. The ARs, for example, running up the line, will not be able to see immediately to their left. There is a space between the goal line, between the player and the goal line, maybe, where there might be a handling offense. How do you cover for each other in situations like that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kevin. So on the Premier League, if you're AR1, so if you're the near side where the technical areas are, I find those challenges to my left-hand side, maybe 10 or 20 meters to my left-hand side, the most difficult when there's an attack building up, because as you've identified, I need to look across the pitch to judge any potential offside. So I can't always look to my left. So we assign the fourth official to be aware of that, as well as the referee, of course. So there's two pairs of eyes watching the potential foul, the potential late tackle, and that then frees up the assistant referee to concentrate on the offside, because it's very important to remember that if there's an offside, although there's four officials on the game, only that assistant can pick up the offside. That's the only pair of eyes that can get that decision. Whereas if there's a late challenge near the halfway line, or maybe 10 or 20 meters into my half, you have the referee, you have the fourth official, and even the other assistant on some occasions might be looking in that direction as well. So what you can't afford to do is have all four pairs of eyes looking to the assistant's left, because the assistant, as you say, needs to be looking across the park to judge any potential offside. So that's how we sort of distribute the areas of authority and the areas of responsibility on the pitch.
Howard, how do you feel about the same thing? And Howard. I think you're, yeah.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks, Cara. Sorry, I just muted myself because I'm at my sister's house and she's making dinner and she's so noisy. Yeah, I think sharing that responsibility is really important, and understanding the restrictions that are placed on that particular role. So Darren's absolutely right that, you know, the only person who can pick up the offside is the assistant. It's their primary responsibility because they're the only person who can pick it up. So as a referee, you've got to understand that that's where their focus is going to be. So if you think about Nigel de Jong's tackle in the final in 2010, yeah, the assault on the chest of Xabi Alonso. You know, there was absolutely no way that Darren's going to pick that up, because as Alonso heads the ball forward, yeah, and he's got a view. It's not a million miles away. It's 30 yards from Darren. It's slightly to the left. If he'd have been looking that way, he might have caught the contact. But the header by Alonso is straight to David Villa, and David Villa is so marginally onside at that point that Darren has no option but to focus his attention on David Villa. And okay, he's scanning, he's sensing, he's smelling, he's listening for when the ball's going to come, but he's looking across the field because he's got to do that to get the offside decision right. Hence the reason that he's out of the game really in terms of what's happening here. And you know, the fourth official's looking straight in. I'm looking from an angle. The other assistant has got a view. It's our responsibility. It's mine first and foremost. Although I kind of blame you each and Suares should have got it, I think, from his position in the technical area. But it's my responsibility, of course it is, to call this, and I would never expect Darren to get involved at all. There's other occasions, of course, where we talk about the assistant being the best placed official. So, you know, decisions that are inside or outside the penalty area, as there's a quick counter attack, and you know, we're seeing more and more. You know, transitional play, aren't we? You know, or counter attacks, you know, breakdowns of possession that put the referee out of position. We're seeing high pressing games. We're seeing officials who have to be sensible and intelligent about their positioning because of the way the game is played, and we have a need sometimes for assistants to be mindful of their responsibility, looking across the top of the 18-yard box when they can make that judgment inside or outside, and also make a judgment maybe whether or not, you know, if it is outside the penalty area and you're looking at a dog soul situation with a red card, you know, was the touch heavy? Was the goalkeeper the favourite? Because they've got that side-on view and they can judge, you know, that perspective of whether or not the ball's going to get to the goalkeeper first. So, you know, you need you know, courage as a ref or as an assistant to understand, you know, when you're the best placed official to make the decision, and then have the courage to be able to speak up and share that opinion. The referee has to recognise when the assistant has got the best information. Don't go too quickly. I even see that where referees will blow, give a penalty kick without even looking at the assistant, who's the best placed official to make the decision. You know, pass on the responsibility around the field. You know, and if you've got comms kits, we used to share that. We used to share responsibility. We used to talk about, you know, it's with you, it's with me, it's with you, it's with me. You know, as somebody's breaking away on goal, think yellow, think, Darren would be saying, think yellow, think red, think red, think red. He'd be talking like this as there's a player bearing down on goal. So that when the decision did have to be made, we could remember where we were, and we're not sort of like deceived by the changing picture that happens after a foul within the next 2 or 3 seconds. So understanding the responsibilities, and again, just think about it. You don't have to be on a game. Just think about it tonight. Get a field of play, and think about those areas where the assistant is likely to be better placed and to have the most information, and also when they're out of the game, when they can't assist because of their responsibilities around offside.
Thanks, Howard. What we'll do now is Katie apparently has gotten her mic fixed. So Katie, I'd like to invite you to ask your question.
All right, are we working now?
You're working now.
Perfect, amazing. Sorry about that. Darren and Howard, thank you so much for joining us, and everybody in the 10 countries around the world. I think this is so awesome, and I'm very, very honored to be here right now. So Darren, I had put this question earlier, but this is also relevant to Howard as well. So we were talking about the trust between the referee and the ARs. Howard, you brought up the team ethos. I thought that was a really good point. But was there ever a time where your trust kind of faltered? I don't know whether it was a decision or something that happened on the field. If somebody fell on their face and you're like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? But has that ever happened? And then how have you recovered from that? Like, how do you regain the grasp on your trust for your relationship, friendship?
Can I come in first, Dan, and then you can sweep up? Hi, Katie. Thanks for the question. Really good question. Bearing in mind that I saw more of Darren at certain periods of the last sort of like or the 15 years that I was active. So more of Darren than I did of my family members. We were inevitably living in each other's pockets quite often. We didn't always get. We had arguments. We had spats. We, like any family would, of course. We always quickly put them aside and moved on. Within a few. Yeah. That meant we could be honest with each other. That Darren was always somebody that would tell me if I had not performed well. If he didn't think I'd done the right thing, he would tell me. There was people that I could text after a game, a TV game, and I knew they would tell me what I wanted to hear. Oh, you were great today, really well. And then I'd watch it back on TV later, and I was really bad. And like the benefit of that, because I hear it now with VAR. I hear there'll be a bit of a dubious penalty call, and it's not the best decision, but it's not a clear error. And the VAR looks at it and they say to the referee, check complete. And the referee goes to the players, check complete. I told you I was right, check complete. I've had to say to the referees, it doesn't mean it's the best call, it just means you've not really made a bad error, So I would do that with these texts. I get a text saying, you had a great game, and then I'd be like, walking around, leaving the stadium saying, I had a great game. When actually I hadn't, and Darren was somebody who would tell me when I hadn't. So that's really important, and did it in a way that didn't make me think I disliked him. He was doing me a service by doing that. Yeah. So it wasn't always like sweetness and light, but overall it's a really strong relationship, like you have in any family. Did I distrust his judgment? Yes, I'll be honest, I did on one occasion. We did a UEFA Champions League match day 6 game, which is the final match day in the Champions League group stage, where teams qualify for the knockout phase after the new year. And we went to the San Siro Stadium in Milan to referee AC Milan against Ajax, and both teams were vying for qualification. It was a must-win game. And 19 minutes into the game, 1-9, with the score at 0-0, in front of a packed San Siro, much as it can be packed. But it was a good atmosphere. And the home captain for Milan, a guy called Riccardo Montelevo, nice guy, ran into Kim Kallstrom, I think it was, wasn't it? Playing for Ajax, just ran into him, a bit clumsy. And I've hit the whistle, run towards the situation, ready to say, hey, Riccardo, it's a bit of a heavy collision. And as I'm walking up to him and about to go like this, Darren says in my earpiece, red card, clear red card. This is the captain of AC Milan in Milan on a match day 6 Champions League game, and Darren wants me to send him off, you know, for a bumper, you know, and I went, and for a moment I hesitated. Normally I just pull the card out, but I didn't. I said, really? Darren, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? And I never asked him before. And he said to me those lovely words, I am 100%.
100%.
So I kind of like, and you got Mario Balotelli playing for Milan, and
oh God.
And I think at that time De Jong was playing there, the guy that I'm not sent off in the World Cup final. So I reached for my red card, pull it out, show it to Montalivo quite sheepishly. Almost wanted to point to Darren, but I didn't do that.
It's his card.
His decision. And I showed it. And as you can imagine, the place erupted, you know. And the players hadn't seen it in the way that Darren had, and nor had I. Anyway, that was a tough 20 minutes then. Got to half time. Had to use all my skill to keep the players calm. Went into the tunnel at the San Siro, and it's quite a bizarre setup. You go off the field at the halfway line, you turn right, you walk all the way along the touchline, Darren, don't you? All the way. Then you go turn left, you go up some steps. The locker rooms for the teams are there. Then we have to go up some more steps, and our rooms upstairs. So coming down after half time, I'm expecting blah 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 from the Milan players who will have seen it at half time. Got to the bottom of the steps, and there I see a few of the players from Clarence Seedorf. Clarence Seedorf was the first player I saw who never said a word. Never said a word. And then next along comes Balotelli, never says a word. So I'm thinking, Canny's done it again. And when you watch it back again, it's a really bad tackle on the ankle, twist the ankle, the studs go in fully. And it's a wonderful decision. And that's the quality of the guy, you know, and I mentioned it in the book, and that's the quality of the guy. And yeah, so did I doubt him? No, not really, but it was such what I seem to be a left field decision. It just made me pause a little bit. But Darren, I hope you realise I was always going to support you.
Yeah, I can't say you were always going to support me on that one. You were a little bit surprised, weren't you? But no, you're very kind, Howard. Nothing to add, really. It was a case of getting the right decision, and that's what we talked about earlier. We know it's not going to be a popular decision, and sometimes as referees, we have to make unpopular decisions, but we have to make the right decision. And at the end of the day, it was the correct decision. And it was a shame that it was so early in the game, but it was a red card tackle. So I was obliged to bring it to Howard's attention, and he kind of sort of sheepishly showed the red card. And but thankfully, it was the right call.
Darren, can I just say as well, by the way, just for the purpose of the guys on the call. So we had the benefit that day of having 24 HD 4K cameras, you know, that captured this beautifully, you know. So we were really well supported. Quite often when you're coming through, you're not going to be supported in that way. You're not going to have the camera angles that prove you're right. So refereeing is about looking after yourself a little bit. So if you see a tackle and you know 100% it's a red card, then you have to trust your instincts. But if it's one of those where you think it's probably more red than yellow, but then the player jumps back up, there's no injury, there's no reaction, just give yourself a second. Don't aim to be too correct, I would say, because you know I don't want to say that it's not about playing the game, but it's about looking after yourself. It's about being intelligent. It's about understanding immediate play reactions. And you know, when I used to work on my own on the field, I had no assistance. And my dad used to say to me when I first started 30 years ago, he said, better to have a dubious offside than a dubious goal. Which is like weird now, because we always say give the benefit of the doubt to the attacking team because we've got cameras to prove that you're right. But back in my day, I didn't. So if I allowed a close offside call to go and I wasn't really sure, I thought it looks offside, but benefit of the doubt might mean I don't blow the whistle. I had no assistant. I was trying to do it from my position. If I let that go through, there's nobody to prove me right, and everybody in the stadium thought I was wrong. Everybody in the ground thought I was wrong. So, just box clever. That's all I would say. In those situations where there's a judgment to be made, where it's not totally clear. If it's totally clear, do the job properly. You have to do the job right when you know what you've seen. But if it's one of those where it's in the margins, just give yourself a second. Look for the reaction. Look for the expectation on the field. Read and smell the expectation, and it'll guide you well. I think so. I think, Darren, I think that's fair comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now we're going to switch over. Thank you, Katie, for your question. Jorik, you're going to be next with Howard and Darren. Jorik,
Yes, good evening. Hello, everyone, and hello, Howard, and hello, Darren. So my question as a young referee myself is, what is the most important skill to possess as a young referee like myself?
Shall I go first? I think you need two things really. You need the ability to communicate to people. It's a people thing. Undoubtedly, it's a people thing. It's about being able to manage and get the trust of people. So the way that you do that, by the way you project yourself in terms of your body language and your voice, your signaling, all of that all comes into the importance of communication. I speak to BB about this quite a lot. I think BB could be a top referee in any sport because she just understands how to read people. She understands how to get people to believe what she's doing. She's obviously good at recognising fouls and foul play, but I think it's more than just understanding the laws of the game. It's about understanding people. I can tell when I'm watching the games that she does on the Bundesliga, whether if she's a little bit late blowing, marginally, it's because she's just smelt it. She smelt the reaction of the player's natural reaction, and then her body language is really calm and really strong and really empathetic as well, knowing when it's right to give a decision, a big one, and say that one's not open for debate, and do that with your body language. And then other times when it's absolutely right to soften your approach and to engage with a player and maybe admit an error or a perceived error or explain the difficulty you had in making a call. Kalina was a wonderful exponent of this, of like, Google eyes, don't challenge me, but at the next minute being really, really soft in his skills and his approach to get players to believe in him. And to see him as somebody that was confident, credible, humble, but strong as well. So I think that, and then the second thing I think is self-belief. Having self-belief is really important. Not arrogance, some ego, but not arrogance, but understanding that players are trying to make you question your self-belief all the time. Players will appeal for decisions that they have no right to appeal for. They know it's a corner, and yet they appeal for a goal kick. They know it's a throw into the opponent, but the first thing they do is appeal for a throw for themselves, knowing it's not theirs. They're trying to make you make an error. And then when you do make an error, they go crazy at you. So trying to please players is not the aim of the game. It's about believing in your line. The games I've lost control over, the games where I've lost my self-belief, where I've not followed my line and the game's gone away from me. And the game's been difficult. Every time I'm hitting the whistle, the reaction is negative. So what do? I start blowing the whistle less. And then the game gets away from me altogether. So when the game is tough, don't hide. Don't stop blowing the whistle. Keep doing what you're there to do. And it might not be perfect, and you might be having one of those days at the office that's not perfect. But the only way you'll have a disaster is if you stop believing in yourself. So mental resilience, self-belief, and the ability to get people to believe you, because we work in shades of grey. We work in shades of grey. That's our life. Some things are black and some are white. Beautiful. But as referees, we work in shades of grey. And trying to get people to believe in your shade of grey is important. You do that through communication. So those are two things that I would say. Darren, I know from an assistant, there's other issues, there's other things that make you brilliant at what you do, what you did, what you still do in the Premier League. And obviously you can talk to those.
Yeah, well, I just want to build on something you said about self-belief, because for me, the most important quality, for whether you're a referee or an assistant referee, is confidence. It is that self-belief. And confidence takes a long time to build. It's a little bit like the stock market. If you imagine the stock market, it sort of just gradually builds and builds and builds and builds and builds over a series of a number of games, and then it plummets very, very quickly. It's hard to get that back because you just have to build that step up with your confidence again. So remaining confident, confident in your own ability, that self-belief, trusting your judgment, those things are so important. And on the occasions when I've gone out and I haven't felt confident, I've always carried a couple of assessments with me in my kit bag, just a simple thing to do, where you've got a particularly good assessment from the assessor or the evaluator. And I just keep it in my bag. And if I'm not feeling confident before a match, I just bring it out and I read it just privately to myself in the corner. And suddenly you feel 10 feet tall again. So it might just be one little message or a little comment or something, the whole assessment maybe, but just building you up, having that confidence is so critical, because you've got 22 people out there, as Howard mentioned, who will try and get those little advantages from you. So it's really important that you stay confident and you have that self-belief, as Howard talked about. And I think that's the most important quality to have, that confidence. And also, of course, for an assistant referee, you need concentration, which maybe we'll talk about in a little while.
And Darren, make sure that you don't have a copy of The Guardian in your bag for times like that. Sometimes they can be a little brutal on referees. But now we're going to go across to Logan. Logan, you
Thank
have
you, guys.
for the pair. Thank you, George. Go ahead, Logan.
Hello. So I am actually one of the individuals that's in the book club group reading your autobiography right now, Howard. And in reading your book, one thing that I'm really curious about is it describes a number of circumstances where in which it was particularly challenging for you to get through. And it not only with the big moments like UEFA and World Cup, but also towards the end of your career, like in the English Premier League, where just the energy and the motivation for refereeing was kind of waning. So my first question is, how do you bounce back from big mistakes and or tough seasons? How do you recharge from those situations?
Thanks, Logan. Yeah, actually, I reminded myself of those words about that last season in the Premier League. So I was reading the chapter that you guys have looked at for tonight's session. When I wrote all those nice things about Darren, he actually paid me £1,000 to say nice words about him, you know. So I thought, go on, I'll do that. I'll take that money. Only joking. But yeah, it was interesting. That final season was challenging for me. I mean, Darren will attest to that. I think I put way too much pressure on myself to finish on a high. And it wasn't representative, I don't think, of other times when I've struggled in my career, when I've made mistakes. There's no doubt, if you care about what you do, there's no doubt that when you do make an error or you underperform, it should matter. You should care. It should have an impact. It should make you feel bad the next day. You know, sometimes I'd wake up the next day from a game on the Premier League, and you know, you'd wake up on a Sunday morning, you've had a bad game the day before, big decision that went against the team, it cost them the game. Before, you know, days before VAR, when you could rectify stuff there and then, and you know, and you'd wake up on the Sunday and you'd see the chink of light coming through the curtains, and you think, oh, it's a lovely, beautiful Sunday morning, and then you remember what you did the day before, and you think, oh, I've got to live with it all day again. And you'd avoid watching TV, avoid reading the newspapers or going online for sure. You don't go to Twitter for confirmation of how well you're doing. So yeah, it's part and parcel of our lives. It is. The only way we'll never make another mistake ever as officials is to stop officiating. I've not made a mistake on the field since the 29th of June, I think, 2014. I've been brilliant. But I've not done anything either. So expect to make mistakes. Understand that it's inevitable. You can't avoid it. But also understand that mistakes very rarely, really rarely, will kill your career. They'll very rarely derail your career. You know, sizable mistakes can be overcome, and most aren't even sizable. You know, in the moment they might feel that way, but they're not. So, you know, don't plan to make mistakes, but don't be alarmed when they do happen. I remember Graham Paul said to me, Graham Paul, who refereed on the Premier League for a long time, was a top referee, and he said to me, you know, I anticipate I'll probably make 3 bad mistakes during the course of the year, and then if I make one, I don't panic. I don't think, oh, you know, I've lost the plot. I just think, you know, that's probably something that I expected to happen. Then when you do have a mistake, obviously, you know, you have a look at what happened, have a look at what you can learn from it, see how you can avoid it from happening in the future. Find people that you trust, who you can speak to honestly, who aren't maybe in competition with you, and have got your interests at heart, your best interests at heart. If you have a difficult game, I know some of your games won't be videoed. I know some of the games will be videoed that you guys are officiating. If they are, I would suggest that you take advantage of looking at the footage of the game. It always looks calmer and better on TV than it felt at the time, in my experience. That helps get your head back on. And then think back to, like Darren said, think back to successful times that you've had before. Darren and I went to the Confederations Cup in 2013 in Brazil, and we refereed a semi-final between Spain and Italy. And it was the first time I refereed Spain since the final in Johannesburg. And the Spanish were not impressed by my performance that night, even though they won the World Cup. And I was nervous about doing this game, a big semi-final in a FIFA tournament involving the Spanish again. And I knew the Spanish media were out to kill me if I put a foot wrong. And Darren, Mike and I sat down outside the pool in the afternoon, and I listed every semi-final that we'd been involved in together as a team. And we've been involved in 24 major semi-finals, Champions League, FA Cup, playoffs in the English Football League, Europa League, etc., etc. And it gave me confidence. It gave me genuine confidence. I think we have delivered big performances in big games many times before, and therefore there's very little reason to think we won't do it again. So a few little tactics there that I think you can incorporate. Expect to make mistakes from time to time. When it comes, don't panic. Don't think it's out of the ordinary. And learn from it. Speak to people that you trust, and then build confidence by looking back on previous successes.
Good. We'd like to turn now, thank you, Logan. I'd like to turn now over to Ashley. Ashley, you had a question for the great pair here.
Evening, guys. Thank you both for joining, and obviously your advice so far on other questions that have been asked. In terms of the best piece of advice you was given as you were both progressing to the top, either as a referee or as an assistant referee, and knowing what you know now, would that piece of advice change if you was to give it to somebody else?
I'll go first, Darren, since I've...
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. Yeah, thank you for the question. My advice, I think when you're coming through the ranks, I remember writing an article 30 years ago when I started refereeing in a local referee magazine, and I thought you needed ambition and perseverance, because as Howard has already spoken about, you will have games that don't go so well, but you just have to get back on the horse, so to speak, and just sort of get back to another game and build that experience. And you need that ambition in the back of your mind. And that's not necessarily to referee the World Cup final, because it might be that you want to get promoted. It might be that you want to do the local cup final, or it might be that you want to get a bit fitter. Whatever that ambition is, I would always set yourself 2-year targets. So set yourself a target, what you want to achieve that season, but also where do you want to be in 2 years' time as well. And a very dear friend of mine, a very wise referee, once said to me, write down your, yeah, that was Howard, yeah. Write down the ambition as well, because statistically you're much more likely to achieve it if you write it down and maybe put it on the front of the fridge, or put it in a drawer, or put it in your kit bag, because you'll come across it every so often. It'll just remind you where you want to be. So when I started refereeing, I actually placed every 2 years where I wanted to be, from passing my referee exam all the way up. And in fact, my ambition was to officiate the FA Cup final. I didn't even think about World Cups or Champions League finals, because they weren't realistic goals. But I wanted to be an assistant referee on the Premier League, and I wanted to do the FA Cup final. So that was my sort of 14-year plan from when I started officiating. And I didn't do it in 14 years, unfortunately, but I did achieve it in 15 years. So by writing it down, it really helped me. And so I would say you need that ambition and you need that perseverance to keep going when things don't go so well. There's always another game the following week, and sort of get back on that horse and you know, keep enjoying it and keep persevering. And if you're good enough and you work hard enough, then you'll get there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Perfect advice. Just to add very quickly, I think what I would say is that I've talked a little bit about gut reactions earlier. I think I did anyway, but if not, then I think gut reactions are important. I think you develop those by doing lots of games. So when you're young enough and you've got the physicality to be able to do it, I would say take on as many assignments as you can. so that you can be exposed to lots of situations, lots of games, lots of reactions. You can feel how you feel about things. When you give a decision, you get an immediate feedback, immediate sense of whether you got it right or wrong, and you can learn what techniques work as you're coming through. So take on as many games as you can. And then something else I just want to say, it's not about the will to win. It's not, because everybody's got that. Everybody's got the will to win. Nobody on this call wants to be a loser. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants not to be promoted. Everybody wants to be the best they can be. But it is about the will to prepare to win. It's and some people have got that more than others. Some people have got the will to do the hard yards away from match day more than others. It's fact of life, really. And some people have got more natural ability than others. But but effort and ability will get you to where you want to get to, and ability without effort won't get you anywhere. So be prepared to do those hard yards. Have more will to prepare to win than the person next to you on this call, to give you the best chance to be successful, because it's competitive, and you need to set yourself apart from the next person, really. So I stole that phrase from the wall at Stoke City's training ground. At Stoke City's training ground, Stoke playing the Championship now. It said it's not about the will to win, because everybody's got that. It's about the will to prepare to win. And I stole it, actually. And they're not doing very well at the minute, to be fair. So obviously they need more will to prepare to win. But yeah, I think it's true. I think you do need to be prepared to do the hard yards and sacrifice other things to be successful. And that advice still stands. And the advice that I was told early on about doing as many games as I can still stands.
I'd like to
well, Howard is
sorry, go ahead.
Hard work will always beat talent when talent doesn't work hard.
That's what I was thinking of. I knew there was a saying, Darren, and that's exactly it.
Okay.
That's why I'm here.
Assisting.
Now I'd like to call on Carol Allers. Carol, your question for Darren and Howard. Carol, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hey. Hi, Darren. Hi, Howard. In the city. So my question is, like, with mental health being at the highest and the craziest of times with the pandemic going on, what do you guys do for self-care? What's the best way that you can help referees prepare themselves?
It's a really good question, actually. I mean, that's consumed a lot of our thoughts over the last few months, as you can imagine. I mean, we've gone from a situation where we would meet every 2 weeks in person down in Dallas or in Minneapolis, in the summer months when it gets a bit too warm down in Texas, to not having met in person since March the 11th. And which led to me spending 15 weeks on my own in Jersey City. I mean, it's like, it was tough to contemplate that could ever be the situation that we were living through. One of the things that I was keen to make sure that we did at Pro, at least anyway, is have really regular contact. So daily contact, I mean, daily emails from me to the group, just an update of the stuff that we knew. And the guys shared a lot of videos around the group as well. And I know a lot of other organisations have done a very similar thing. I've been massively impressed by the amount of work that's been done by refereeing bodies and organisations as well to bring people together. I've done lots of Zoom presentations around different states and what have you, and some back in the UK as well. It's clear to me how much refereeing plays a part in people's lives, how much they miss it when it's not there, how much it contributes to the sort of like the work-life social balance that they have. But for a long time, we simply weren't able to do it. We weren't able to get out there and be a part of it. So, we put a lot of stuff online. We made sure that, we were able to discuss football situations and general personal situations. I made myself available for contact at any time during the day where, people could drop in. We had a virtual campus where we all had avatars and we sat there and we had a coffee together, which was quite interesting. And we also, made sure that we just did what we could to stay connected. we looked at ways we could solve the physical training side of things. So, we provided gym equipment for people, adjusted the training schedules. We realized there was going to be some actual tangible differences when we came back to in market play without fans. So one of our meetings in May or June, we invited Anthony Taylor from the Premier League to come and speak to us. We've done a closed gates game in Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League in March. And Dennis Eitigen from Germany came and spoke to us about a game that he'd done in the Bundesliga when they started. How is it different refereeing without fans in the stadium? What can you hear that's different? The appeals, the contacts, the benches, all that type of thing. Is the atmosphere quieter at the start? So those sort of practical things we did as well. I'm really impressed by how we've come through it. We got back to Orlando for the MLS's back tournament, and our performances were don't say this quietly amongst the 50-something of us, but our performances were way better than the teams. Our performances, comparatively speaking, were at a higher level than the players. I know they're doing different things. They're doing something mechanically with their body as well, rather than just thinking about things. So maybe it's harder to prep for, but we did really well. I've seen some fatigue in the back end of the season. I've seen referees being fatigued. They're having to travel 2 days before games for COVID testing. They're getting tested every few days. There's the risk of flying around on commercial airliners, which we try to mitigate, but every time you come home, you've got this little nagging voice in the back of your mind that, you might be picking something up somewhere. So challenging times. I hope the vaccine comes through really quickly. I hope we can get back to normal by the summertime next year. I don't know how it's been in the Premier League, Darren. I don't know how you've kept connected with the guys in the select group, for example, but certainly, I'm sure you've done stuff similar to what we've done.
Yeah, very similar. I have to commend the Professional Game Match Officials Limited, PGMOL, because they've got our welfare at heart, more than anything else, which is what an organisation should give, really. So we have weekly Zoom calls that all of the referees, all of the assistant referees on the EPL, sometimes twice a week as well. So we have a close-knit community, even though we're spread all over the country. And on top of that, obviously, we have our little friendship groups as well. We have WhatsApp groups, that kind of thing. So I think because a lot of the people on the call will be local referees and not have a big organisation, a professional organisation like Pro or like PGMOL, then I think it's really important to pick up the phone, text, WhatsApp, even just phone, a 2-minute phone call. Just we are fellow referees in the community, just to help them, just to make sure they're okay. I think we have to look after each other in these unprecedented times, but hopefully, it won't last forever. Hopefully there will be a vaccine on its way, and hopefully we can all get back to refereeing, both at professional level and at grassroots level.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Carol, for a great question. One more question and then we'll wrap up. All right. And this will go to, sorry, Cara, can you introduce?
Giacomo Azzari?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Darren, Howard, you were referring in very noisy, huge, hot stadiums, for example, San Siro in Milan, like Howard said before. And I like to ask you, how do you personally cope with the pressure of the atmosphere in the stadium? I mean, at the beginning of the match, but in match as well, for example, after your whistle or a decision. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take this one, Howard, first, and then you can add to that. It's very easy, I think, for an assistant referee because we're not facing the crowd. The crowd are kind of behind us. So first of all, I don't see them. And then second of all, because we have the earpiece and Howard is talking a lot like tonight. So he's talking in one ear. And so I don't even hear the crowd. So I always, when I'm doing a big game, maybe there's 70,000, 80,000, 90,000 people, I tell myself it's the same match as it is when I started refereeing. It's 22 players, it's the ball, and they have to score goals. And I think if you focus on the pitch and forget the surroundings, then you will do a better job. So that means that you don't think about the spectators, you don't think about the TV cameras, you don't think about the managers. And because if you think of all those things, that will build pressure and that will make your job much more difficult to perform. So for me, I strip away the layers of pressure and just bring it down to 22 people and the ball, and just try and get my decisions right and totally ignore what is being said in the crowd. And with some practice, that can be achieved. And as I say, we're lucky that we have an earpiece so that a lot of the noise is drowned out anyway, because I'm listening to the referee, the fourth official and the other assistant referee. So I have something to focus on, to concentrate on. And so that way I just completely forget there's even a crowd at the game.
It's quite interesting, Darren talks about the earpiece, because I've seen both sides of it. I've seen, you know, the time when we had no communication systems, and then obviously we had it towards the end of our career as well, towards the end, and we've had it for about the last 8 years or so. But when you were refereeing in a big stadium with a full crowd, maybe 60 or 70,000 people, without the system, it could still be a lonely place, even though you've got thousands of people around you. So you think it wouldn't be lonely. It felt lonely sometimes, you know, and suddenly you've just got 3 friends in your ear, or now 5 if you've got VAR and AVAR, and it makes the world a difference. It just makes it such a better working environment. You know, you've got your colleagues and your friends who are wanting to deliver this game with you. So it makes such a difference to have that. I did an interview on Thursday with the I did 2 New York Times and Wall Street Journal actually, about refereeing in empty stadiums, which I've never really done apart from in friendly games. Never games with something riding on the result. And so I said to him, look, you need to speak to one of the referees that's done it. But I don't actually think it's an advantage having an empty stadium. I think that when referees go out onto the field, I agree with Darren, they block out the crowd. It doesn't make a difference, negatively at least, in terms of the crowd size. Now, don't forget, we've stepped up bit by bit to get to that level. So we've learned to cope with additional pressure as we've gone along. Whether you could drop somebody out of this level into, you know, the Premier League or an MLS game, somewhere like Atlanta United when there's 65,000 people there, I'm not sure. But you learn, as Darren said, with some practice, you learn to block it all out and you just focus on what you've got to do. Whether it affects you subconsciously, I don't know. I guess we'll never know. There's talk about results being favourable to away teams with no fans, but I'm sure there's a range of factors that goes into that. It's not just down to referees not giving penalties because the crowd don't cheer for it. Because to be honest, I don't consciously hear the crowd when I'm refereeing in front of that many people. What I do sense is that when the crowd is there, when you can smell the atmosphere when you arrive, when you can feel the electricity in the air, it actually makes you better at what you do. It gives you that adrenaline. It gives you those. And I had, maybe Darren didn't, because Darren's a pretty cool customer and he's got massive confidence in what he does, and it's well-founded confidence. I was always a little bit less self-certain than him. And I had doubts, nervousness a little bit, shall I say, in my tummy. And every game I had some butterflies in my tummy. But the games where I think I did the best are the ones where the butterflies were a little bit bigger, you know, and it sharpened my sort of like my cognitive skills. It made me a little bit more sharper, if you like, than games where there was no atmosphere, where it was flat. So it's definitely a positive when there's a big crowd, definitely positive. You don't hear the abuse. Okay, sometimes I heard 60,000 shouting, "You're bold," and you know you are, or the ref has got nowhere, that sort of thing. But generally speaking...
Sorry about that.
Yeah, but generally speaking, it's only a positive, actually. And you'll find that as you go through the ranks, you'll find that you'll thrive on the energy in the place. It'll make you better at what you do. Don't be afraid of butterflies in the tummy. It's normal, makes you better at what you do as well. So, and as Darren says, you know, once you get out there, it's not a negative. You don't think about it. It just instinctively makes you a little bit sharper. And it's a great place to be, guys. Just to close on this, you've got the best seats in the house, whether you're on the line, in the middle, as a fourth official. You know, you've got a wonderful opportunity to be close to some of these great athletes in a sport that we love. And I know you guys aren't quite at that level yet, but you're all striving to get there. And I can only speak for MLS. But next year, we're going to have 27 teams with the arrival of Austin. And then we're going to go to 28, 29, up to 32, I suspect. And there's referees coming towards retirement age, and there's assistants coming towards retirement age. And opportunities exist both in Pro 2 and Pro. The USL is growing exponentially. NWSL is going to continue adding new teams as well. So that's just from the US scene. You know, obviously the English scene is well established, and lots of investment has been made into the refereeing landscape here. And for those from other parts of the world, the same applies. You know, the demands, the requirements, the rewards, everything's getting higher and higher, and therefore, you know, there's more and more being invested in all aspects of the game, even in this difficult corona time, which will pass. But the opportunities are there. If you work hard and for long enough and have good aptitude and good attitude, then there's no reason why you won't make it to a really good level. And don't forget, just have that will to prepare to win.
Thank you.
Okay. One more question, Howard, then we'll wrap up. This will go to Matt. Matt, your question?
Yeah, hi, thanks guys. I'll let you go. I think everyone's a bit hungry. Just a quick question for Howard. My name is Matt. I run Referee Abroad with Daniel. I know you met him a few years back. I'm actually a Fulham fan, so I was there at Loftus Road in your first ever Premier League game. I think it was Fulham Wolves back in 2003. And since seeing you then and seeing your career progress up into 2014, your fitness changed incredibly over those years. I was just wondering, you're like, for me, you're a bit of like a cheerleader. You kind of changed the image of referees on the field. You were super fit at the end of your career. What kind of inspired that change for you?
Matt, you must have been about 3 years old. That's all I can say. Yeah, and do you remember what the score was?
It was a pretty boring game. Yeah, I think it was 0-0.
It was 0-0, and my next 4 Premier League games were 0-0. My first 5 were all goalless. Can you believe that? That is unbelievable. And the first goal came in the 6th game. It was a reverse of this game. It was Wolves against Fulham. And it was scored by Paul Ince of Wolves, I'm sorry to say, as a Fulham fan. But there you go. Wow. Yeah, 6 games before I saw a goal in this wonderful league. Yeah, I recognised quite early on, and I talked earlier, I got asked a question about might be by Ashley, I think, about what are the most important attributes. Or I think Ash talks about advice, didn't he? But somebody asked me about what are the most important attributes. I talked about communication. I'm not just talking about blah, 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 what comes out of your mouth. You know what I mean? That can be important, although not as important as you might think. Most of our referees who come through into pro speak far too much blah, blah, blah. I can't believe I'm saying those words. The first time I ever heard those words, I refereed a game, an under-19s game between Israel and Spain in Madrid in a UEFA tournament. And the German assessor, Aaron Schmidhuber, came in. He said, you. I thought I'd done a great job. He said, you're a typical English referee. Blah, 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 blah. Too much blah, blah. He said, red is red, yellow is yellow, no blah, blah, blah. And the next game, I didn't say a word to anybody. It was a nightmare. It was a painful game. He came in, he said, bravo, bravo. Wunderbar. So yeah, too much blah, blah, blah. But it's not about just what you say. It's about what you don't say. And it's about how you do say what you do say. But it's about your body language. It's about the way you look. It's about the way you present yourself when you walk across the white line. There were some interesting images shown in the montage that Kevin put up earlier. There's one with the assistant saying, just give me ins and outs, with a big belly and all that sort of thing. Listen, there's no formula for being a successful ref. You don't have to be 6'5" or 5'6". You don't have to be black, white. You don't have to be male, female. You don't have to be, and you can be successful however you look, but you've just got to be credible. You've got to be credible. And to be credible, you've got to look like you belong. You've got to look like you care. You've got to look like you've sacrificed time and effort to be there in the way the players have for them to believe in what you do. And I realized at quite an early age that I could work hard to be a good decision maker. Good decision making comes from being in the right position. It comes from analysing video and talking to colleagues and thinking about things and attending sessions like this. Getting into the right position needs fitness. It does. But there were better referees than me in the Premier League. Better decision makers, better instinctive decision makers who never really got their opportunity because the players didn't quite buy into them in the same way necessarily. They weren't seen as the safe pair of hands in terms of acceptance of decisions. And you've got to look at what sets yourself apart. And I realised quite early that if I looked the part, if I looked dominant on the field, if I looked like I knew what I was doing, even if I didn't, you know, and being 6'2" is not important. You know, you can't punch a player in the face. That's not what it's about. You know, it's not about physical size. Paul Durkin, many of you won't remember Paul Durkin, but he was a little short, red-haired referee from Portland in Hampshire, I think it is, or Dorset, yeah. And you know, a brilliant referee, just used every ounce of what he'd got. Cüneyt Çakır from Turkey, you know, just uses facial expressions, you know, in a way that gets people to believe him. So work on what works for you, but be credible, look the part, look like you've worked hard to get there. I changed my training from very much an aerobic-based training program to one much more involving strength training. There was a great study done by Dr. Matt Weston about the way that I changed my training over 10 years. Now my VO2 max increased, but also my body fat came down, even though I was getting 10 years older. And it's just because I trained more cleverly. I didn't just run. I started doing a lot more weight sessions, a lot more speed endurance sessions and speed sessions. And speed endurance are so important for being a referee. With this transitional play that we're seeing, the high press, and they need to adjust position, they need to be strong and flexible, and they need to look the part. Ideally with lower body fat. You don't want to look, even though you can be a great ref, you don't want to look like you don't belong on an athletic field. No matter how good your decision making is, if you look like you don't look after yourself, then they're probably not going to accept your decision making the way they would somebody else. So work to your strengths really, and think what can make you credible on the field. Get yourself videoed. I know certainly in the US there's a lot of videoing going off in showcase events and that sort of thing. Always grab the link to the stream and have a look at how you look on video, because that's how other people see you. And just work on little advantages that can make a difference, because the best decision makers don't always make it to the top. A little bit different when you're an assistant, Darren. I'm not saying you don't look the part of anything. I'm just saying that your advancement was down to quality decision making, because your decisions are much more, quite often, factual.
Yeah, it's more matter of fact. Yeah, I will just touch very briefly on something Howard said about his physicality, though, because there's no doubt that if you put the work in, that is another asset that you can sort of have, you know, another string to your bow, if you like, as a referee. And in the World Cup, both World Cups we went to in 2010 and 2014, we were trained for 3 hours in the morning from 9 until 12. And some of the sessions would be really tough, you know, high intensity sessions, speed endurance sessions. And Mike and I mean, it was really hard work, but Howard would sort of be leading the field, if you like. And then we'd get bussed back to the hotel, and we would think, well, at least training's finished now. And Howard would say, right, let's hit the gym for an hour. And we would go in before lunch every single day, and we would push weights. And Howard's weights were always 2 or 3 times heavier than mine and Mike's, to be fair. I guess the point is you're doing a little bit extra. Not many of the trios went into the gym every single day. In fact, probably none of them went in every single day. We went in every single day after training and did a bit extra. And that's that drive that we were talking about earlier, where Howard, you know, wanted to improve, wanted to enhance his appearance, wanted to look the part, and he sort of dragged me and Mike with him. And just those little things, doing something a little bit extra than the next person that Howard was talking about earlier, that may be the difference between success and not getting success. So it's thanks to him that we were able to achieve what we did achieve on a world stage, because he had that work ethic to push us to do that little bit more each time.
And going back right to the theme of this seminar, it wasn't about me, it was about teamwork, because the expertise you brought and the brilliance in decision making, combined with the perception we were able to create as a team, gave us the chance to be successful. So kind of like Kevin takes us right back to the start, and it's all about teamwork.
And thank you very, very much, Darren and Howard. We really appreciate you taking the time off. Honestly, the person I'd want to question next would be your sister, but I don't think she's be willing to come in on the camera.
Chicken dinner with some Yorkshire puddings.
Oh, okay, we'll be right over. But thank you again immensely. Thank you to Norfolk County FA, to Referee Abroad, and to the U.S. Officials Referee Academy. We will be posting this video on YouTube, and we also have the feedback form up. Always looking for ways to improve. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy your Yorkshire pudding, Howard. Thanks all.
Thanks, Kevin.